Now for the business tracker, transaction tracker application, this is what we'll be building. So let's go back here. It's something I've built before. So would build it with an authentication. So I've built this before. Just put an email. So simple email like that.com. So I've already signed up this person, and then just put in the password and sign in. So once you sign in, it moves us into the business transaction application that I've built. So you're supposed to see all the transactions and the type of transaction, if it is a debit or credit transaction. And then you could choose what you want to see. For example, you can filter here and say, I just want to see only my credit. And notice that it remains only the credit transactions. If you want to see only the debit, you can just change it and you have only debit transactions. And then if you want to see only transaction from a given time to a given time, it could start say from 29th of January down to where we are today, or you could make it shorter. So if I keep it at here, then this is what we'll have. So it covers everything from 29 of January down to 17 of February. Now we could choose that we want to see only the credit and you see that the debit is gone, or want to see only the debit and then we have only the debit and the credit is gone. Okay. So I can also choose to reset this from here, and these are the places that transaction totals are shown. So for here, you see the credit transaction. You could filter and then see what this two gives you, and you see it gives you 246 here. And then you could filter and say, okay, only debit transaction. You check the total, you see what it gives you here. All right. And here is the balance, that is the income minus the expenses. So this is where you have it. Okay, will be something similar. We might not be very exactly like what we're seeing. So you just click on the add button and you can add what you want. So for example, you add transport like this, and credit, sorry, it's a debit transaction, and then you put in the price. So if you put in the price, you should have say, let's say 2,000, something like that. And this is a transaction done today. You could choose to add the description or not. So I could just paste that the description, add transaction, and you see that it adds here at the top. You see, you can choose to edit it, all right, and you can choose to, of course, delete it if you choose to, like so. Now it asks for you this pop-up where you have to check if you should delete it or not. So you can just choose yes, and it's gone, something like that. So this is what you want to build. You can also sign out here like this. This is just what I want to build. Now what we're building might be a bit different in design, but the core functionality will be the same, and by the end you should be able to build a business tracker application or business transaction tracker application. Okay, so let's get into it. I think we'll just go back here and then we'll start a new project. So for us to do that, let's go back to our homepage here, and then we'll start a new app. So create a new app, and we say this is biz tracker, biz transaction tracker, like that. And as you could choose a template, but we're not using a template. So get started. And of course, as usual, we're starting with the basic features. So let's go back here and close this off because we're done with it for now. We're also done with the editor here. So close this off. We are also done with this for now. I think we are done with this too. So we'll just keep this on its own because we might be referring to it as we build that. Okay. But aside from that, let's come back here. Now that we are doing this last one, I have a curriculum for it. So this will just guide us in what we are doing. But basically, these are the steps of what we'll be doing. So the first thing we want to do is build the authentication UI. Then we'll build the transaction UI as much as we can. We might make changes over time. We will now add the authentication workflow and the transaction CRUD, that is create, read, update, and delete. Then we'll build out the filter and sorting UI as we saw. After which we'll now add the filter and sorting workflow. There's a bunch of things that will pick up along the line, but that is it. Let's get started immediately to build the Auth UI. Okay. So of course we are in the index page here, and here in the layout we change this to column. This could also be row. Whatever you choose is just fine. Okay, but let's keep it at column, and come down here. Let's pick a width of 1400. All right, so that is it. So width of, okay, you could choose to get rid of the gap between maybe rows or stuff, so you can just check this off, and that is it. That works what we want. Okay, so I think that is it. So we'll leave the height at 1000 for now. As we build out and we are done with the page, we could just get rid of the height. Okay, so let's build the login and logout, which is the authentication. Now, if you check here, you see that we have two buttons. One is login and one is sign up. So when you click on this, it shows the login page or pop-up. And when you click on this, it shows the register pop-up. Now, in our own case, we'll just change this off and just build the actual authentication on this page. Okay. So we'll just do, let's first of all create like a nav bar. So at the top, so let's take group like that. Group, let's take it there. This group will say group nav, something like that. The width is already fine for us. What we just maybe work on is the height, something like that. So I want to check this and then make this mean height to be, let's make it a fixed height. So fixed height, let's set it to say 50. That looks okay, but 100 should be better. Okay. So now that we have this, we'll just put like a logo at the top here. Okay. So now that when we have the logo, that should make everything work as it should. So we could just do this image brand or logo, and then pick an image. So we can pick just an image. So we just pick this one, and immediately it stores it at a remote location and fixes it for us. So now that we've done that, what we need to do next will be to set up the width and height. So here we'll just set the width to be say 100, and the height. So we're also making this a fixed height of 100, like that. So it fits in nicely. Let's make sure that this group nav has paddings all over. So let's set up, let's see what 10 gives us. That looks small, so let's make it a 20, 20, 20, okay, 20, 20, and 20. So this looks better. So for that reason, we'll just make this image smaller. So now that we have 20 at the top and the bottom, what is remaining could be around say 50 for the width, and then 50 for the height. So I think this is a bit better, but we also need it to stay at the middle. No, not here. So let's undo that and select it again, and all right, so just set it at the middle like this. Okay, so that works perfectly for us. All right, now something else we could do is to add some roundness, which is border radius. We just make this 10, and I think that should just be fine like that. So now that we have that, we'll not be putting any of that in there in the nav link on the nav. We'll be doing more in the next page, which will be the transaction page. Now, aside from this, the next thing we want to do is to add another group where we will now have our login and sign up like that. So let's go back and add a group here. So we say group auth like that, and then inside of it we'll be adding two groups. So let's pull another group, drop it inside of it. So it should be inside. Let me just get rid of it and pull it again. So where's the group? Group. like that. All right, so that works. So we'll have the group inside of group. So it's difficult to know, of course, what we have added. So for us to make sure that we know what we've added, so I could just make this group login. For us to make sure that we know what we have added, let's make this a width. Let's give it a fixed width and say we want it to take up 50%. So just change it to 50% and give it a little background color. So come down a bit and let's look for the background color, make it a flat color. And then let's pick this color and keep it at 30% like that. So here's the group plugin. So that didn't work as I planned. So let's pick it again. Okay, that's better. 30%. So that works just fine. So now we have this taking up just half of this group. So let's copy and paste it again. So you see it's taking up also half. That's the second one. But let's rename the second one to sign up. And let's change the color. Let's change the color to something else, just so that we see the difference. Okay, so let's pick something else like that, 30%, and I think that's cool. Now it's stacked on top of each other, but I want it to be side by side. So select this group again and come to the container layout like this, and then pick row. So once you pick row, everything is now stacked by the side. So we just put forms in each of them and we are good to go. Okay. So first things first, let's put some sort of heading inside of here. This should be inside of here. Great. And let's change this to, I think let's use sign in like that, and change this to say heading 4. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. All right. So we just change this to container layout to be row, and then make sure that this is properly centered at the middle. That's one way we could do this, and we could also change it to column and just make this a group of its own, and it would work. Eventually, we might need to do that, but for now, let's pick the inputs. We are building out the form, so we need for email and password. So where's the input? So here's the input. Let's put it inside of here. Should be inside. All right, so have it inside. Let's get rid of this. All right, so let's do it again. So I want it to be inside of the group sign-in. So let's pull it inside. So this is why I was telling you, you might need to just change this to column layout. So let's change it to column. And then we want this to be at the middle. So for us to do that, we need to change this. I'll probably make it like a group, so something like that. So I'll just let's make sure this is working fine. All right. So I'll just add this to a group like this and make a group row like that. And so it's taking up the whole row. And so at this point, we could just make it group heading, something like this. So that's fine. And here we can put it at the middle again. Okay. And I think we should just get rid of this background color. I think it's confusing me. Get messed up sometimes. Okay. No, great. So this is better. So now that we have the sign in, let's now create a form. So this would be for email. So for email, let's change what the placeholder says. So make it email like that. And for the width, let's let's leave the width at 100%. So let's come down to the layout here, and then let's say make this element fixed width. Let's check that off. Let's keep the height at 48. Okay, and then let's add another input, which will be the password. So let's make sure that we rename this. So this will be password, like that. So here in the appearance, we are changing the placeholder to password. So and it is changing properly. Then the final thing we need to do is add a button. So let's get the button that we need. Button should be at the top. So let's add it here. So let's add it here inside. Okay, great. So this button will button login, something like that, sign up. And we're changing this to sign up. Sorry, let's change it to login. That's just fine. Okay. Same thing with the width. Let it take up the whole width. So uncheck this, and you have it taking up the whole width. Okay, and that's great. So we'll have the form and we'll have the heading. So what we'll do now is to group all this into a form. So let's group it into a form. So group items into column container, like that. And then now that we have it into a column container, we can change this to form, group form. And then for the spacing, we can make this 20. So that's great. And we can now space these items, that's the sign in and heading and the form. So we could space it from here and say we're giving it 30, something like that. So that should work perfectly. That should be okay. So let me close this off. And that's fine for what we're looking for. That looks good to me. That looks good to me. So now that we are done with this, what we'll just do is to copy this and paste over in this other side. So we'll just copy this and paste it in like this. And then we'll get rid of this one that we added here. So we'll just delete it. Okay. So we'll start making changes here and there. For example, we don't want this to be login copy to. We want this to be sign up, like that. And that's what we also want the text inside to see. So let's copy this, come here and change the appearance to sign up, like that. Now in this other side, we're adding one more field. So let's copy this and paste. Now the first field will be name. So input name. But something I really want us to add is I want us to add sign up to it. And the reason for adding sign up to it is because when we want to use this input, their namings will just be the same thing. So we could just do like sign up, something like that. So input name sign up. I'll just copy it and add it to the rest. So this is it for this one, sign up. Password, sign up, like that. Now for login here, let's change this to register. Great. So something we want to also do is to give this some spaces from the side. So let's select the both of them, come down to layout and come to padding here. So here in the padding, we'll add like 10 on each side. So let's get back here and add 10. Go here and add another 10. Like that. So that affects the both sides, but I think we can still get more space. So let's change it to 20. And on this side, 20. All right, so this seems to be better. Okay, so we can preview this, I guess. There's something else we can do is to add a bit of spacing at the top here. So not group forms this time around. Let's go to group sign up, I think. So group sign up. Yeah, that's this so this group auth, right? So I think what we need to target is group auth. All right, so here under the layout, we want to add some padding at the top and bottom. This is group auth, and then there is left and right where we added 2020. So let's add at the top too. So let's add like, no, let's make it like 20. Like that. So let's preview what we have so far. All right. So it is here, and everything looks good, but we can shrink this a bit more, I think. But we can also leave it like this. It doesn't look bad. I think it is just cool. So let's remove the debugger that we have here so far. Okay. So now that we have this set up, it's looking cool for to me. Um, so what we want to do now is to create a new page. So let's just come down here, up here rather, and add a new page. The page will call it transactions, and we are not cloning it from anything, so we just create a new one. And of course, as usual, change this to column or row, and then change this to 1400 like that, and can leave the height at whatsoever. When we are done, we'll still get rid of that height. Okay, so let's go back to our index. I'll just copy this group. That's this group now. Copy it. All right, and then come to the transactions, paste it in like that. So that's good. And all right, let's rename this transaction here. So let's make this transactions. Okay, and then let's come back to the index here, and we'll name this home, something like that. Home, like that. So now that we think we are done with this page, we can now set up our height properly to be 0. So once you keep it at 0, it will be able to take up whatsoever it's inside of the content. Okay. So now that we've done this, it will ask us to refresh, but that's not a problem. So let's move right into creating this authentication. So for us to create the authentication, we just click on the register button here, and then here under the appearance, we click on this add workflow. So in this add workflow, we want to sign up the user. All right, sign the user up. So click on sign up, and then we'll pass in what we want the email to be. So we'll just check for email. I notice we have this input email sign up. We are taking the value. For the password, so password. Now notice that I'll have two passwords. One is the input password, and second one is input password sign up. So for the input password, that's for the login. For the input password sign up, that's for sign up. And we are taking the value. Okay. Here now we're adding one more field, which is name, that is not there inside of the user data set. So we are creating it automatically here, and we are saying that it should be a type of text, and then create it. So for the value, let's type name, and we have name sign up. Of course, we have just name under sign up. Sorry, we have name only under sign up. Okay. So once we sign up, what do we want to happen next? Once we are done signing up, we want it to navigate us into another page. So go to page like that, and the destination would be transaction. For now, no data to send, but this is just fine for us. Okay. So now that we are done with the sign up, what we can do just to make sure that we signed up. So let's come back here, go to transactions, and let's add a text. Let's add a text inside of here, and let's change the orientation of this to a row. That looks better. And for this, set it up properly. All right. So here, what we want is anybody that signs up, we want to see their name. Okay. So let's come here. Let's change it to current users email, something like that. And then let's just spread everything here out. So it's going to happen at this side. We'll still come back to make some of these fixes, but we just want to see the email that signs up. Okay. So that is it. Then let's also work on the login. So let's go back to the index here. So here in the login, let's click on this button and add workflow like that. Here in the workflow, we want to log the user in. And what do we want? We want the email to be equal to input email value. We also want the password to be input passwords value like that, and stay logged in. So once you do that, what do we want? We want you to go into a page. So go to page, and we are talking about the transaction page. So that's just it. Now, one more thing that we need to do. So let's go back, go to the transaction page. So remember that what we are doing now is everything about authentication. So let's drag in a button. So just drag in this button in here. So it should be inside of here. Okay. And it actually should be after this. Okay, great. Now we'll make sure that this both of them stays in the same place. But let's finish starting the button. So this should be log out like that. And let's go here and change it to field dark destruction, something like this. I think that should work, or destructive rather. There's the light destructive, so whichever I want. I think this is fine for me. Okay. So now that we've done this, we'll also work on the logout functionality. So click on the logout, add workflow. Here in the workflow, we want to log the user out. So once you click on log the user out, the next thing we want is for navigation to take us back to page. So go to page, and the page we want is the index page this time around. So that's the flow, and that completes the authentication that we are doing. So let's refresh. So now that we are done refreshing, you can check the database. There should be nothing in the database when we check the app data. So here is the user, and our table here is empty. So let's try to sign a user in. So let's try sam@gmail.com. No, let's take this off and just say Sam, and paste this inside of here, and then put the password like that. So once you are done, register. This should navigate us into the transaction page, and then you should have your email showing for you like this. Isn't this awesome? Now, if we are done here, we could just click on the logout, and it takes us back to the index. So you could choose to now log in because you're already signed up. Okay. So let's enter the password like so. So once we are done with this, sign in, and then we also have our email showing for us, which shows that everything has worked just as it should be, right? So back here, we've been able to build our Auth UI. So now let's build the transaction UI. All right. So let's go back here. And what we'll now do is to build out a table from which we'll show everything that we have been able to put. You know what? Let's start by creating a form to add into the database before we talk about retrieving, so that we don't have to hard code anything. So the thing we'll now do, let's go back here, and back here, let's add another button to this top. Okay, so let's add the button like this, and then let's change it to add transaction, something like that. That's it. Basically, that's what we need to do. But what we can do this time around is to group the two, that is the two buttons we have here, so that they are both in the same place. So let's convert this to row container like that, and then let's say group buttons, so btns, and then here in the layouts, let's make sure that we fit width to content like this. Then at the top here, let's add say like 20 of space between the two buttons. So now that we have it like this, everything looks good. I think one more thing that we can do, let's just make sure that this is properly fit at the middle. So let's select this, and yeah, that should work. I think vertical alignment, okay, better. So here in the vertical alignment, this one I'm supposed to do it. So that works, vertical alignment. So what we want this add transaction to do is to pop up for us a form where we can add, say, name of the transaction. We'll add name of the transaction. We'll add description of the transaction. What else? We'll add the price of the transaction, the transaction types. These are just the 4 things that we need to add. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is to get a pop-up like this. So this will be pop-up add transaction. Okay. Let's give it a width. Let's give it a width of say 480 like that. So that should be fine. What else? All right, so let's do it like this. So the first thing we'll do is give it a heading. So move this here and say add transaction. And then let's size it up a bit, just a bit. So let's take it to heading 6. That looks good to me. The next thing would be to add an icon. So let's look for the icon. So material icon. I should have. I think I've not installed plugin inside of this. So let's just go and install plugins. So let's go here, install more. So we're adding this Google material icon, and that is all. So once you have it, so we could just add an icon to the page. So what we want is a close icon. So we just select this. I'll keep the size to 24. Like that. And then let's select the two of them. Let's group it into a row container like that. And then let's make it space between like that. And then for each of the items, let's make sure they are vertically aligned like that. So that looks good to me. So the next thing is to create the form that we need. So let's get an input for the title of the transaction. Title of the transaction, that's what we want. And I want to make sure that this takes up the whole width, okay? And also make sure that this input should not be empty. So just check this out. So let's go to the layouts here, and let's make sure that it takes up the whole width by unchecking make this element fixed width. And that is really what we need for that. So we can just copy and paste. So copy, paste, paste, paste. So the first thing is the title. The second thing is the price. So here we'll change this text to, we want to change it to currency. Good. So change it to currency. And here in the title, we are changing it to price. Then we can change the prefix to anything we want. I can just change it to Naira. And what else? So this initial content, I think everything seems good. All right, so that's great. What next do we want to add? There is the price, then there is the type. Okay, so if you want to change a type to something else, it's very easy. So for here, we are using an input, but what we need is like a select. So let's just right click on this and let's say replace this element type. So you can just come here and choose like a drop down. So what you have is a drop down. So just click on the drop down, replace what we have here, and then you can make two choices. So either you are making debits or you're making a credit. Okay, so what I can do is, so that I'll be able to reuse this in some other place, I can go to data here and then go to option sets. Skip this tutorial. Just create a new option set, which is transaction type. All right, create it and then add two. So one is debit, create it, and then the other one is credit, create it like that. So now back to our design. Here we can now say that we don't want static choices, we want dynamic choices. And what are the choices? What we want is transaction type. And here in the caption here, we just want the current options display to be basically the whatever we see. All right, so here we'll choose here in the placeholder, we can say something like choose select type, something like that. So for the choice source, it should be all transaction type. Okay, so that's that concludes that for this. Of course, this input should not be empty. So now I'll have the transaction, we'll have the title, we have the price, we also have the type. One more thing is needed. I think that should be, I don't know, it should be description. So just let's check out what we have here. So we'll log in and see what they have here. So we just want the title, the type. That's just fine for me. We are not putting in the description. It's not necessary. You can do that on your own, by the way. We're also not selecting a date. We'll use the date it was entered. Okay. So let's go back, and I think that works just fine. Title, type, price. Okay. All right, that's cool. I don't want this to take more than the time it should. So we'll just get rid of this last one. Okay. So what we can now do is to group the three of them. Okay, before we group it, let's make sure we now have the button. So just add a button at the bottom. So I think messed up something a bit. All right, so let's delete this. And then let's pull a button inside of here. So let's drag it down like that. And we'll just say add, something like that. But I want it to take up the full width. So take up the full width. And then let's select everything we have here. Let's group them. Column container. So let's say group form add like that. And here in the layout, let's add some spaces between, and that will be 20, like that. It drops down like so. And then we could add, let's say we add some padding or margin at the top and the bottom. So let's go with padding. So 20 at the top. I don't think we need anyone at the bottom. That looks good to me. Now for us to see this add transaction, let's come here. Here at this add transaction button, come to the appearance here, add workflow. And so what we want is to show elements. Which element we want to show is the pop-up add transaction. It's always at the top, okay? So when we come down here, we can do a refresh to see what we've done so far. So once you click on this, notice that it gives us this nice form for us, and we can do select here, pick anything that you want, okay? So the next thing we want to do is to actually add transaction to our database. So let's move back. We also need to make sure that this close button is working. So let's go back, come here, and then let's get our pop-up. Click on this, go to appearance, go to start or edit workflow. I want it to hide element. Which element? The pop-up. I'll just create it. Okay. So for us to add to the database, we want to be able to get all this data and then add it to the database. So what we'll do is click on this add and add workflow. So here we'll say that we want to create a thing. So just click on this create new thing and then pick the type of thing you want to create. So notice that we don't have any type that we've created. You can create it from here. So create a new type. So this new type would be transactions, something like that. Confirm it. So this is the new type we are creating. And then what are the fields that we want to create? Now what I'm doing is what I would have done inside of the data source side. That is here. But I'm just trying to do everything out of the box from here. So the first thing we want is the title. So create it and say it's title. Take from the option set. Sorry, take from the drop down here, and this title should be text. Create it, and then we want it to be input title, the value. Now the next thing that we want would be price. So create the price. So there is nothing like currency here, so you can just pick number. And for here, make sure it's the price input, so input price value like that. And the third thing would be what we have here will be the type, that is the transaction type. Okay, so let's come here and say we want it to be this transaction type. So instead of coming down to the basic type, we're using from the option set. So transaction type, create. And here we are now saying that we want it to be, let's look for the type. So it should be input. No, let's look for a drop down. Rather, it should be a drop down instead. So drop down, select type, like that, the value. So that is it. As soon as you pick, you submit your form, it will add all this type to the transaction. Once it's done adding, we want to now reset relevant inputs, of course, and then here we want to hide the elements. Okay. Now, where are the transaction that we just, or where is this data type or data set that we just created? So if you come to data here, notice that we now have here in the data types, we now have what we call transactions. And when you check it here, you notice that it has, so let's select it, sorry. It has price added to it, it has title added to it, and it also have a transaction type added to it. So everything is done for you out of the box here in Bubble, and that's what is really cool about it. Now, when we come to the app data, we'll see notice that both the user now have one person because we've registered one person, but the transaction has nobody inside of it or no content inside of it, right? So let's go back here and refresh. So now when we add an item, it should add to that table. So let's try it. So let's say sold bags, or we just say bags. And the price, what is the price? Let's set it to say 100,000, something like that. That's fine. And then let's make this a credit, which means we sold it and add. So immediately does like this, that means it has added. How do we confirm that it has added? Now look at here that we just checked. Initially it has nothing, but now we have one bag added to it. Okay. We can choose to add another one. So this time around we might do like a debit. Okay. So we could say transport, and the price could be 2,000. And here we are making it a debit transaction. Add it, and as soon as you add it, when you come here, notice how beautifully this is laid out. So what we want to now do is to be able to place it on our records here and display to the user. Okay. So now let's go back to our design and come back to the plain page here. We'll just add a table here and start retrieving our data. So let's get the table. So here's the table, drop it in here. And it's going to ask us which type of content are we looking to display here. It is transactions, okay? And for the data source, we want to do a search for transactions like this, okay? And once you do this, that will be all for the table. Now, other things we could do is for the design, let's make it full width. So come to the layout and then check off this fit width to content. We could also choose to check off this fits height to content so that it takes up as much space as possible. Okay. Then something we might want to do is to come to the repeating row 1 here, repeating group, and here in the appearance we want to set this count to as many as possible as we can get. Okay. So the first thing here would be to add like a serial number here. So let's drag in a text like that, and we'll say serial number, so S/N. Okay, we can make this 18 a little stronger, bold, something like that, or we'll just change it to 16. Sorry, that's fine. So some other things we might want to do here is to come here, make sure it is vertically aligned, and here the cell, make sure that this is aligned to the center like that. So once you have this, let's copy this, paste it here, and so this should be title like that. Stay in the middle too, and let's copy this, paste it. That's the price like that. Also make sure it's in the middle. All right, so there's one more thing that would be the type. So for that, we could just come here and add a column to the right, and then do the same thing that we've done so far. Let me close this off. And here I'll copy this, I'll paste it inside here, and then let's change this to type. Change this to type, and then let's make sure that this is also center aligned. So this is what we need for now. We'll add others as we go. All right. So let's make it as simple as possible as we proceed. So for the repeating group or the repeating table, what we'll do is we'll just work on one row and other ones follow. Anything you do on the first row, other ones will follow. So grab this text and drop it inside of here. Good. Inside of this. And notice how it repeats across the other ones. And here we want to insert current rows index like that. That's just it. So if you go back here and refresh, you should now be able to see the number of items we have in our database. Okay. So I think this is quite big. I'll come back to that. So we have because we have 2 items, we have 1, 2 here. All right. So we'll work on that. So just give me a moment. Now let's copy it. Before we copy, actually, let's make sure that this is in the middle like that. Okay. Now we can copy this, paste it inside of here. Now what do we want? For this one, we want the current rows title. Current rows transaction title. That's what we want. Okay. So we'll copy it to paste it inside of the price. So what do we want? Price, like this. And for this, paste it to what we want here is the type. Okay. Okay, types display. Now this is because the type here is a drop down, so it's a display, not just value. So let's do a refresh again. Now notice how this is flowing as we want. Okay. So to fix these big boxes that we have here, let's go back here and select the table, and then here I will have fit height to content. Let's check it, and that should make it look better now. So let's refresh, and then now this is looking better. We could choose to make these boxes maybe smaller or something. It is just your choice. Anyone you choose is just fine. Okay. Let's just keep working and picking learning stuff. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think everything is looking really, really good. So let's just keep working like that. We could actually, let's reduce the height and make it 20. I think this should look better. Also for the repeating group here, let's give the height to say around maybe 25. Or we'll keep it at 20. So like that. So that should be better. Let's try it again. Do a refresh instead of it looking too big. Let's also put in the max height to be 25 here. Then for this one to max height to be 20. So let's do a refresh. This should work. So it's a bit skewed. I think this is too much. Okay, so let's keep the height to be, let's make it let's try 50. Let's try 50 and see how it looks. I think this looks better. Okay, this looks better. For the repeating row, let's get rid of this 25 and just make this 30. 30 be fine, or we should make it 50, which will be the same thing with what we have there at the top. So let me be sure for what we are working with here. Okay, so here should be 25. We want it to be 30. So let's do that again, and then all right, make it 30. Not sure why that's behaving like that. But let's do a refresh this time around. I think this should be better. All right, this looks better, I think, in my opinion. So what else do we want to do? Okay, so now that we are able to retrieve the items, we could give this like a title. So let's come at the top here, and let's make sure that this table has some sort of maybe padding at the top and bottom. So let's add like 50, like that. No, it shouldn't be padding, it should be margin rather. So let's give it a 50, 50, like that. That looks a bit better. Let's add some sort of heading here where you see that this is transactions, so transactions. And then let's give it say heading 3. Looks big. Let's bring it down a bit. Heading 4. Let's try heading 5. I think the heading 5 should just be fine. So let's close off this. So this transaction text is just standing on its own and it's fine. So let's probably make it a group. So let's group elements into row container like that. Makes it easy for us. We could just say group heading for now. And then let's add maybe some padding also, top and down. Just make it small, 10, like that, so that looks better for me. And then we could also add some padding by this side. So let's go down here. Let's make sure this 10 is constant. Okay, let's make it 20 rather. 20 and 20. And what is more, here at the table, we could make sure that it leaves the edges too. So let's give it some sort of margin left and right of 20, 20, like that. Now I'm feeling like we should reduce these other ones to 20, 20, like that. So that looks better. So let's do a refresh. And then everything we have arranged is being applied properly. So let's see what we have done. So first we can now add transactions. So for example, I could add that machines were sold and we sold it for 20,000. It's a credit transaction, and then we add it and you see how it adds. Okay. So the other thing we want to do now is to add an edit and delete functionality. So let's go back here and then let's add a column to the right. So this column to the right, we'll be adding 2 icons there. We've done this in past tutorials. So we'll be adding two items. So it should be here. So let's close this off and let me move this inside of the table. I'm not sure why it's not properly aligning. So we could just move this down a bit. So let's move it so it's still in the wrong cell. So let's move it really down to this cell E, which is the last cell. Okay. And so we can change the sizing to 24 by 24, like that. Okay. I'm feeling like this is now too tiny for me. So I'll just change it up. So instead of 30-30, let me make this 50-50 so that it's not so tiny. Okay. All right, this is better. Let's change this, and the first thing would be edit. So we just pick any of the edits icon, and the second one will be delete, like that. Pick any one, but let's change this to red. All right. Now for the cell alignment, let's go to layout. It's on row, but let's make it to adjust around. You could also set it up like this or like this to stay in the middle, whatever way, but I think setting it with space around is just fine. Okay. All right. So at this point, we could choose to just delete an item. So whatever way we choose is all good. The only thing we might want to do is maybe let's add like a check before we decide to maybe delete an item. Okay. So that means we need to create a new pop-up that'll be asking, are you sure you want to delete something like that? So let's look for a pop-up. Let's drag it, drop it here. Pop-up confirmation, like that. So here in the add transaction, we could just copy this this heading. So it's transaction heading pop up. So we could just copy it, and then here in pop-up confirmation, we could just paste it. Okay. And then let's make sure we set the width of the pop-up properly. So the width for it. All right. So let's zoom in a little more. So let's change this to transaction delete confirmation, something like that. Something like delete transaction, something like that. So you could add a text. So let's add that text in between. Text that says something like, are you sure you want to delete? So let's close this off. And then let's pick the text again. I'm not sure why this is not staying where it's supposed to be. All right, let's try this again. So let's pick this text, drop it inside of here. And so we are asking, are you sure? Are you sure you want to delete? So we'll now put the transaction that we've passed in. All right. So something we want to pass in here would be transactions. Okay. Now, when we've passed this transaction down here, it will be just one transaction. There is no need to work on the data source here. And let's come back here and try to add like the parent group transactions name. So I want, or title rather. So it would read something like, are you sure I want to delete? So maybe transport transaction, something like that. All right, so let's make sure everything looks good. So that is it, transaction. Transaction. All right, now after that we want to add some buttons. I think just one button will be fine. So let's drag this button into here, and then inside here we'll say delete. So you could choose to add another button that will say something like cancel, so that you close off. But I think we already have one button doing it for us here, and it is just fine. Okay. Of course, in the layout, we want it to be full width like that, and then want the appearance to be changed to something like this, which is feel like destructive. And then here inside the pop-up confirmation, here in the layout, we want to add some spacing around the column. So give it at 30. That looks good. I think that's just fine. But what we can do is to add some sort of padding to this. So let's come down here and add some left and right padding. So keep it at 50 and also keep this at 50 like that. Now for this text, we could just bring some of this text down. So like this one. Okay, so that's better. All right, that's cool. Let's also center align everything so that everything looks cool. Now for the height of the pop-up, let's get rid of the height. So let's come down here and there should be no height. Okay, so this is just what we want. So let's try it. For us to get this pop-up, we need to pass in a particular transaction. So for each of this row, we have access to some transactions. So click on this and then we say start to edit workflow. So we want it to show that particular item. So show an element, and which element do we want? This is a pop-up confirmation. Okay, so let's come back here and do a refresh. Let's see what we have. So now that we are here and you try to delete, it asks you, do you really want to delete this transaction that will pass here? Now the transaction isn't showing, so let's check why it's not showing. Okay, so let's go back and check. So come back here and let's check why it is not working. So pop-up confirmation. So we need to go and make sure that we pass in the data. So it's not seeing the data that we've passed. So let's go back here in the start edit workflow for the delete. After we pop up this confirmation pop-up, we're supposed to pass down some data. So here helps us to just do it immediately. So that display data in group. So you could also check it under data here to pass down certain things. Yes, also in navigation, stuff like that. So here, display data in a group or pop-up. So like that. And so now we have the pop-up confirmation as the element, but the data I want to display, we want the current rows transaction. So once we do it like this, we should be good to go. So let's go back here, do a refresh. And let's try again. So you see, it's saying, are you sure you want to delete bags transaction? We could try this. We'll try this for transport. So you see the transport one, and you see the machine one like that. Okay. So let's go back here. Everything looks good to me. So what we could do, just to clean what we've done up a little bit, because I'm not very sure. We could keep everything on the same line. Keep everything on the same line. Okay. So let's keep it like that, and let's do a refresh again. Try again, and this looks cool. I could just put like a space, so that's all. So let's try again, and that looks better now. So when we click on this delete, we should be able to delete. So let's go back and work on all of this. So for this close, we need to start to edit and say we want it to close, or hide rather, hide an element. So hide the confirmation element. All right, so let's come back here. We can reduce the width. Let's reduce the width of this pop-up. So the width says 480 here. We could just make it really small. So I will try 300. That looks, or let's just make it fixed. I think we didn't make it fixed, that's why. So check here to make it fixed, fixed width. Okay, so this is cool, and we should be good to go now if we click on this. So let's click on the delete. So when we click on the delete, go to add workflow. Here we want to delete a thing. So here, just delete thing. So what do we want to delete? parent groups transaction. That is what we want to delete. So click on that. So once we do that, we should be able to delete items. Okay. So let's do a refresh this time around. When we do a refresh, let's try to delete. So let's click on this and then click delete, and that item has been deleted. Let's close this now. One thing we want to make sure we do after we are done deleting is to close the pop-up. So hide the pop-up confirmation like that. So with that, we have been able to complete the delete function. So let's try adding transaction, bottles, price 200. Here it's a debit transaction. Then we add it. Okay, so that's it down here. We'll try to delete, ask us if we want to delete, and when we delete, it's gone. Everything is gone. So that's cool. The next thing would now be the updates. So if you recall here, we said we want to build the create, read, update, and delete. So we've been able to do the create, we've been able to do the read, we've been able to do the delete. So let's do the update. So for us to do the update one, we need to duplicate the pop-up that's used for adding transaction. Okay. So let's do the pop-up again, and then let's copy this, paste it here. Let's get rid of this like that. To this add transaction. Let's change this to edit transaction. Okay. Let me make sure I change the pop-up properly to edit like that. And in here, I want to change this to update. All right, so this works properly. Now, for each of these inputs, we want to add edit to it. So edit like that, edit like that. Okay. And for this button, we are changing it to edit like that. All right, great. So let's pass down the data as it should be again. We now have what was the form for updating. So let's go back here, add the workflow. So start read stroke edit workflow. We want to bring up, let's show an element, and the element we want to show is pop-up edit transaction. Okay, and down here we want to display some data, and that would be the current rows transaction. All right. So current rows transaction. So let's keep it at this, and let's come back here. Now it's showing us that error because we didn't, the component is not expecting that data. So let's come back here, come to the edit here, and then it's asking us which data do we want. So we want it to pass down a transaction. So when we go back to our workflow here, you see that the current rows transaction is now blue. So that means the data is properly being passed as it should be. Now let's also go to the form. So this form also needs to collect the transaction. So we are expecting a transaction, but which transaction exactly are we expecting? We're expecting the parent group's transaction. Okay. So now that we have access to this, we can now pass in the data that we have passed in through from the row where the particular edit button is. Okay. So the initial content, what we want it to be is parent group's transactions title. Let's do for this one too. For here too, we want it to be parents group transactions price. So let's take price. And for this one, we want to see if we could pick the current display. So I think this one works fine. So default value is parents groups transactions type display. Okay. Not sure why this is not going as I planned. Parent group transaction type like that. Okay, the display was not supposed to be there. Great. So let's try this now. Let's make sure this is working. Starts close. So you close. We want you to hide an element, and that is the pop-up edit, like that. Let's come back here, do a refresh. So let's try to edit, and so we have everything the way it should be. So let's try the debit one, and it's working. Okay. So back here, let's actually edit the item. This should not take any time. So let's click on the edit button, add workflow, and come here. Want to go to data here, and so want to make changes to thing. And what thing are we making changes to? Parent groups transaction. Yeah. So when you come here, want to now add the fields that we want to change. So for price, we are looking forward to getting the price from the input price edit value. The next one is title, and we're looking forward to getting that title from the edit title value. And the last one should be type, and we're looking forward to getting that type from drop down select value. Okay, like that. So once you do this, the next thing would be to close or hide. I want to hide this particular edit element. So once we do that, that's good. So let's come back here. Everything should be good. Fingers crossed. All right. So let's try to edit this. So let's maybe make changes to this and make this 5,000. 5,000. And hit edit. So this changes to 5,000. So we could choose to change this to add 5,000 like that. But could add another 200 like this. It's just fine. Machinery like that. So edit, and everything is working just as it should be. So far we've been able to authenticate users, and also we have been able to add transaction, delete transaction, read from the database, and update. So the next thing we want to do now is to add a filter and add some sorting functionality. So we are good to go. So we have been able to check off a lot of things here. So let me make this a to-do list as usual. So we've been able to build the Auth UI, build the transaction UI. We've added Auth Workflow. We've also added the transaction CRUD. So what's remaining now is to build the filter and sorting UI, and then add the filter and sorting workflow. Okay. So let's move right into it. So this is where we are. Let's move back here and come here. So we'll just we'll add the filter between the transaction here and the table. Okay. I could just copy and paste the heading. So let me see if that works. Copy, paste like that. So this one will be the filter part. Let me make it group filter and sort, filter and sort. Okay. For the text, we could bring down this text a bit to like 18, and then we just say filter like that. I think this looks nice. It looks okay. So the next thing we want to add would be we'll add another text. So we'll just add the text here, and we'll say something like type. All right. So we want to maybe filter by type, and the other thing we need to add is inputs. Just add an input like this. For this, we would reduce the height. Before we reduce the height, let's change this to type. and I think this shouldn't be an input. So let's replace it with drop down. So this should be a drop down because we'll be setting up types here. It's going to be a dynamic type, and we are taking the transaction type. The data source is all transaction type. And for the caption here, let's do current options display like that. So for the height, let's bring it down to say 24. Seems a bit tiny, but I think it should be good. And let's group this together. So if we group this, we want to group it into a row container like that, and we'll say group inputs or group drop down like that. That should be okay. For this group, we want to say fit width to content. All right, and what else? This looks okay. For the type here, text, let's add something at the front here. Okay, and then for this, we want to separate or add some spacing between the elements. So let's say we are adding 10 like that. I think that is cool. That's okay for me. All right, now let's make sure that everything is in the middle. So for this, keep it at the middle. The text, keep it at the middle, and also this, please keep it at the middle so that it looks nice. All right, great. Now we'll just give a general spacing for everything we'll be adding here. So let's come here, add space, and say this is 20, so that the type moves a little bit forward. Okay. So for this filter, we could just add filter by, so that it's not just filter by. I think that looks nicer that way. So after doing this, the next thing we want to do is add a start date and an end date. So the start date and the end date will be used to sort items based on when they were entered into the database. So there will be like a start, maybe start on 1st and to 15. What are those transactions that happen between those days? Okay. So we could just make this group start date, something like that. Start date like that, and then here you could just change this to start date, something like that. Start date. And then let's change this element. So replace element with an input, replace place. And then you come down here in the placeholder, you could just say start date, and then here in the content format, it should be a date like this. But we could also choose like a date range to make everything easy for ourselves if there was like a date range. So if you notice here, there's nothing like a date range. That's why I am picking a date. And so once we have done this, what else can we do? So a few other things that we could do is to start specifying when the date is going to start, when it's going to end, and all those good stuff. Okay. So this first thing is initial content. For the initial content, I could say that I want it to be like today or a day before. So for example, I can say, let's talk about date. Say current date, something like that. So once you do current date, that's all. It will put today's date there. And then if we say it shouldn't be empty, then it must be checked, something like that. All right. So that is it. I think that's all you really need to know here. Here in the layouts, that's also cool. What we have is already good. So we'll just copy this, copy it and paste it. So copy and paste, and so we change it to end date. end date like that. Then here in the appearance, just want to change here to end date like that. So just very similar. That's what we are doing here. Okay. Um, like I pointed out, we are picking the date here because that's what we have available for us. But if you ever have, say, for example, a date range, that is a far better one that you want to use. Okay. So we have the input, start date and all, and that works really cool. All right. So this is cool. Let's go back here and do a refresh. Then I'll show you some other things. So this is nice. We could just come and clear all this and it changes, okay? But how about if you could get a better UI, say for this date so that you can just do that selection yourself, okay? So let's go back and here we want to change this replace this element type. We want to replace it with a date. So here's a date picker. You can use any of these things you are looking here, but what we need is a date stroke time picker. So we pick that and replace it. Don't forget that whenever you want, you can come down here and check any of these elements that works for you. So here is anything about forms. So we are using the date picker now. So there's also like the picture uploader if you ever need it. Okay. Uh, so I picked the picture picker by mistake. Okay, so let's pick something else. All right, so here we've replaced it with a date picker, which makes a lot of sense because it presents us with all sort of functionalities. Okay, so for example, here, of course, the initial content we have here would be the current date and time. We will adjust this eventually. Here is the date and time format. We could change it to anything we want, but we'll leave it at this one that we are looking for. Then we could say this the week should start on Monday. You could check this if you want the week to start on Monday, and then display drop down to pick a month or year, something like that. So I could just check this out because check this because I like it. Now, what's the minimum date we want here? So if you are picking a minimum date, say for the start date, you can pick any previous date, but it will not make sense to pick a date that is beyond the current date where we are, right? So here we want the maximum date to not be beyond the dates where we are at the moment, okay? So which will be the current date, right? And that is it. So it will gray out everything that comes after the current date, okay? So let's also change this one. So we replace elements. We are using date time picker as usual, right? And then you can do the whole formatting. Now for the minimum of this one, the minimum should not be lower than anything that we've chosen there in the start date. Okay, so let me make sure I change this properly to end. So here we'll now say start this value, and we want to add plus day. So we are adding 1 day. So you just put 1, and that is it. So what it means is whatever the value of the start date, you just add 1 to make the minimum of the end date. Okay. Now, how about the maximum date? So the maximum date could be something like date. So want to pick a date. So for example, we could say current day time plus 1, something like that. So that would be the maximum day. So we could do current day, right? And then we want to add 1 day to it. So that makes the maximum date that we can have, right? So I think all this works just fine. Display done. Yes, let's check this out. So this is good. So let's come back here and do a refresh. So we have our drop down here. And now when you click on this, there should be a drop down. Now notice that the cool thing is that it doesn't go beyond today's date, which is 18. Okay. And for this, the only date we have currently is 19. I was not even supposed to give. I'm not supposed to give a. Okay, okay. The minimum is fine, right? So that's correct. So we picked currently it is at 18, which is today's date, and then for the end date it just adds one, and so every other thing is grayed out because the start date, the end date cannot be greater than the current day, or maybe I just add one, and it cannot be less than the start date. So for us to have more dates here, we need to come here and maybe pick like number one, which is February 1. And then when you come here, you notice that you now have between February 2 and 19 for your picking. Okay. All right, great. Let's get back here. And the thing we want to do now is to see how we could do the sorting. So let's come back to this table. So here in the table, we initially said that we are getting transactions. We're doing a search for transaction, right? But this time around, we now want to add some filter variables. So for example, one, we want to get all the transaction that the type of transaction, the transaction type is equivalent to the type drop down. All right. So drop down select. Let me make sure I name this properly. So you need to properly name it so that you'll be able to get it. So let's put filter in front so that we know that this is the drop type for filter. So let's come back here again and redo this. So when transaction is equal to a filter drop down type value. So that is okay. Now let's do it one at a time. One thing we need to specify is that we want to ignore empty constraints. So if you don't ignore this empty constraint, then if there is nothing matching what you give, then it will not show other things that are inside of the database. So make sure we check it, and then let's come back here and do a refresh. So now when we pick on any one, it should show us only what we have. So you see the credit is gone because we picked debit. And then when we click on on credit, it shows us only credit. So that's cool. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever we're picking is not less than the start date or not greater than the end date if they are selected. All right. So the created date should be equal to the, sorry, not equal to rather. So let's redo what we're doing. Okay. Not equal to, it should be, it should not be less than, or let's just use like this. Let's say it should be equal to or greater than, so equal to or greater than the start date, like this, the value that we get there. Okay. Now this created date should not also be greater than the end date. So it should be equal to or less than the end date, the value of that end date. Okay. We are of course ignoring empty constraints here. Okay. So now that we have this, let's do a refresh. And now this will show us all the data that we have in the database. Let's make sure we select 17. I think it's because I selected the current day. So let's make sure we select 17. So we could choose select 19. So anything between 17 and from 17, which is a day before, something like that, that would just work perfectly for us. Okay. So now that we've selected this, we could now choose okay, only debits. All right. Now I could choose to pick 18, and of course this picks 19 for me. But you notice that we will not have any value because it doesn't match properly. Sorry. Of course, I can't even pick what I can pick so that I'll show you that it doesn't work. So let's pick like number 2. That is 2nd of February. I'll maybe pick something around 15. And notice everything clears up because we don't have any data for those days. Okay, so that's cool. Now let's return back here. We have been able to sort out that one. What else we can do? What else can we do? We can now do we can work on the sorting, but before we work on the sort, let's work on some calculations. Okay, which will be want to be able to isolate the let's be able to isolate the credit total, the debit total, and the balance when you subtract it. Okay. Okay. Let's go back here and inside of here. So everything here works and we ignore constraints. Now another thing we can add here, would be to only make sure that the person logged in can see only the data that they have added. So we'll use created by has to be equivalent to current user. That's just it. So once you do this, if we log in with somebody else, we shouldn't be able to see all this data that have been added by a different user. And we're going to try this in a bit. So let's log out. And let's try to sign up somebody else. So Ebere at Gmail. Let me get rid of this and put it here. So this should be named actually. I think I didn't name it properly and it confuses me too. So Ebere. And then here the password, we just put in our password and then register this person. So when we register this person and we try to maybe do a selection, pick different dates and all, it's not going to work because we've not added anything. I mean, this person has not added anything. So let's try adding, and let's say machines. This went for like 500, 50,000, something like this. And this is a credit transaction. Click on it. You see, it's showing because this user is the one that added this particular one. Okay. All right, great. Where are we? Let's go back. We now want to work on totals. For us to do that, we want to use some buttons that will differentiate everything we are doing one from each other. Okay. So we'll be adding the buttons inside of here. Okay. But we would be needing let's just duplicate this particular group, and we want it to be group totals, something like that. We'll get rid of everything inside of here eventually. So delete this like that, delete this. For these two, we're deleting it. How about this? Delete. So let's just pull in a button. We'll use different buttons here. Okay. So let's pull in a button here. Let's also delete this. Now the first button will show us the balance, the total balance. So here we'll have balance. So what we want to show here would be we want to get all the transactions that that is currently available for a particular person. Then we'll do the arithmetics, the mathematics. Okay, so we do a search for transactions where the transaction belongs to this particular person. Okay, so we pick that the created by must be equal to the current user, like that. Okay, now what else do we want to do? So let's just do it for that user, and then we also want to select this transaction where the type is equivalent to credits, because we want to get all credits. All right, then we'll come here and now say we'll sum it up. So let's come down here inside the options and say we want to sum. So we should have sum somewhere around here. So we'll now target for each transaction. So let's pick each item's price. That's what we want. So if we pick each item's price, we will now do like a sum. So let's come down here and you see a sum. So once we are done with the sum, the next thing we want to do is do a subtraction. So if we now have the sum, so the next thing is to do a subtraction. So this should be a subtraction sign. And then we'll do exactly the same thing again. We'll do a search for the transactions. But this time around, we want to make sure that the type is equal to debit. Okay. The debits. So just debit should be fine in this case. Debits. And then let's make sure that it is created by the same person. Created by is equivalent to current user. So once you have this close, we will now pick each item's price like that and do a sum. So what we are doing here is we are searching for all transactions with each price, and we are summing it up. We're also searching for the transactions where the type is debit. The first one is the type is credit, okay? And we're getting the sum. So whatsoever the balance is, we should be able to see it inside of this particular button that we have here, all right? If we check it now, it should be working. So let's go here, do a refresh. So far the only balance will be 50,000. Of course, because we have only 50,000 here. So let's try to add something else. So let's say we add bottle and say for this there was 2,000 naira, and then this was a debit transaction, okay? And let's add it. Notice that it's now showing us 48,000 naira because, of course, the item we are talking about is a debit transaction, okay? So let me make sure that this is 19 so that everything is showing up properly, okay? All right. So we'll be adding two more buttons here. We could just duplicate this one, I think. So let's just duplicate this one. So just copy and paste like that. Now for the appearance, we'll change it to something around green. So let's see if we have something like that. Oh, I'll need to make it myself. All right, so what we'll have is basically red, blue, basically. So let me see this primary lights. Okay. So this for me should work. So for this one, we want it to contain all transactions, just all transactions that are credit transactions. That's it. So that's it. What else do we need? I think that is it. That is all for that one. And then we'll also duplicate this again. I want this to be here. All right, so in here we would remove the first part because we want this to be a sum of all debit transaction. So let me make sure I do it properly. All right, so all right, let me just get rid of the second part, and in here we would check this transaction and just change this to debit. All right, so that is okay. So transaction, change this to debit, and that is it. So close it off. For the appearance, let's change this to something like reddish stuff. So that should work perfectly. And for the orientation, now we will hardly be able to see it here because of the length of the buttons that we are working with. But what we can just do here is to make sure that the alignment takes everything and stretches it across. So this is space around, and this space between, and that space between is what we're working with. So let's do a refresh. Great. So we now have the total transaction for credits, and this is total transaction for debit. Okay. All right, great. Everything is working as we planned, and that sorts that out. What we can just make change to is what this is supposed to contain. So this is not supposed to be balance. Or anyway, it's cool. We'll just do credit balance, something like that, credit balance. And for this one, we'll just do debit balance. And then for this last one, we do total balance. I feel like I should just get rid of no, let me leave the balance for this one. All right. That should be nice. So let's do a refresh. All right, so this is better. All right, so we have been able to sort this out, and it looks all good. So one more thing I think is remaining is to actually do a sort, to actually sort what we have here. All right, so for us to do this sort, let's come back here, and then let's add where are we? We're in the wrong place. Okay, so let's go back here and let's add the sorts drop down. Okay, so let's copy and paste the sorts. Okay, and then we'll change this to sorts, and this would be changed to a drop down. So a drop down, let's replace it. Now what we want here is to be able to sort by want to be able to sort by the created time or created dates. So want something like created at descending, created at ascending, and then the same thing, but this time around descending. Okay. So for this, there's some workaround around it and how you could do it. I'll just show you briefly, but I'll implement the right way this thing should be done. All right. So for example, if you want to do this sort, you could just come to the table here, and then here where you do the search, you could say sort by, and then you pick say created date, and then you could choose if it should be ascending or descending. All right. But we want to be able to give people the chance to dynamically change this thing. So you could choose to maybe start creating two inputs and start tying them to this, but I will not do that. I'll just get rid of these two. So let me get rid of these two. Okay, and this. All right, and let me get rid of this one too. So both of them will not be working. Okay, so let's close this off. And then what we need to do is go to database. Let's set some option sets, and then gradually you see how it works. So what we want here is sort options. Like that, create it. And then inside of here, we want created or some, we can just see something like dates created. Ascending. And then dates created. Descending. So at the top here, let's create two attributes. So one is the field. So what we'll be doing is that for each of those option sets we've created, we'll map them to a particular field, and this would be a field text. So create it. And then the second one would it be descending or ascending? So let's put descending, and then you put it to be a boolean, which is yes or no, something like that. So create. So now that we're done creating it like this, the next thing we want to set up is to modify the attribute. Okay, so to modify this attribute, we click on modify attribute. Then of course the display name would be descending. Sorry, date created ascending. So for descending, we'll say no, which means it should be ascending. And for the field that we are targeting, it is created at, so I hope I think I spelled this correctly. So created something like that. So let's go back and check it out. So what we want is created date rather. Okay, created date. So let's go back. Let's go back here and fix this. So created date, that's what we are looking for. Okay. Now save this. And then we also modify the second attribute. Same thing, created date. That's what we're looking for. And then here in the descending, we will put yes. We want it to be descending. It's okay. And create it. So now that we're done with this, we can now come back to our sort here and then change the options, make it dynamic, and then pick this from the sort options. Then here in the choices, we want all sort options like that. And for here, we want current options, something like that. Current options display. For the default value, we can use the descending, something like this. And that is it. This input should not be empty. So now we've done this, but it doesn't mean it takes effect because we've not actually attached it to our data that we're fetching. But let's see what we've done so far. See how it's looking. So once you click on this, you see either descending or ascending. So for now, it doesn't really do much. Okay. So what we're supposed to do is to sort this based on the dates they were created. All right. So let's come here. All right. So here in the table, what we want to do here in the table is to go back and revisit our our fetching transaction here, and we want to see how we'll be able to now infuse these sort options that we have put in here. So instead of selecting any of these options, what we want to do is go down and say change which field. So this now gives us this dynamic field name. So what we now want is to go to sort. So this it should be drop down rather, drop down. This should be dynamic. So dynamic drop down. We have multiple drop down here. Let me make sure I get it properly. So here's the drop down. Okay, so this is supposed to be renamed to drop down sort, something like that. And then here the placeholder should be select option. All right, now we are back here. What we want to pick is the field sort. Okay, drop down sorts. I think that's what I just named it. So the value, so the drop down sort value, and what we want to pick in the value is the field. That's the field name. Okay, then coming to the descending, we want the same thing. So drop down sorts, the value, once this time around the descending. So basically what's going on here is that we have passed in two options there in our option sets in the database here. This is where we're passing everything. So what's asking us for here now is what do we want to pass in for the sorts. So for the sort, we want to pass in this drop down sort values field. Now if you come here and you remember when we modified this, inside the field, we passed in the field we are expecting to be mapped to, okay? So that is the field that we are currently being mapped to here. And then for the descending, this is the second value here. That is this descending. And if you also remember, we choose whether this thing should be descending or not. So when we come back here, I think we are good to go. So we could do a refresh. And so by default, this is in descending order. which means the last one in, it will be the first one at the top. And then if we click on this other one, that is the ascending one, you see how it readjusts just as it should be. So we could do this descending, or it could be ascending. So this is beautiful, awesome. And I think I should place all these things in one line. So let me come back here and maybe reduce maybe the width of some of these things. So let's keep the width to as minimal as possible. So this, let's keep all of them as minimal as possible. So let's go to the layout and check for the width, 250. Let's make that 200. So that's better. Now this looks really cool. Everything we want, we have it now. And it's working perfectly. Awesome. You see? So let's sign out. Let's log out and log in the other user Sam at gmail.com, and then pass in the password like that. Let's log that user in. And as soon as we log the user in, we are able to see the data we've added before. We see the balance and everything as it should be. We can sort the way we want, filter the way we want, and then we can choose to sort if we have all the data. So it's currently in ascending order. You could change it to descending order, and it swaps so nicely. So something else I would love to just do is format all these all the numbers or currency we are seeing. Okay, so let's come down here in price, and here in price we want to do the formatting. So here we'll say formatted as. So this should be currency, and maybe 2 decimal place. Then the decimal separator will be a dot, and the thousand separator will be a comma. And then we want the currency to be naira, because I'm in Nigeria. Okay. All right. So this changes the formatting, and we also want the same thing for this. So let's get back here and let's format this properly. So we choose the sum. All right, and we say formatted as. We change this to double decimal place. Of course, the decimal separator, the thousand separator, like that. And I think we need to do that for both of them. So we make sure we select the sum. No, I think I just made a mistake somewhere. So here, select the sum like that. Okay, I don't think we need to change the first one. I think I was mixing it up. So this should be fine. We'll check it and be sure. For this one, we messed it up a little bit. So let me make sure this is fine. So each item's price, then sum, and then formatted as same thing, 2 decimal place, with a comma like that. Close it off. Also for here, choose the sum like that, and formatted as 2 decimal place, thousand separator. Close it. I think that works just as it should be. So let's do a refresh. All right, so everything is working just as it should be everywhere. All right, great. Everything is showing up nicely, even on the table. Okay. Yeah, and that is it. If you also want to make similar changes to your pop-up, so you could come to the add pop-up, and you can generally play around with everything you have here, right? So that there is nothing to fear about. Okay, so that is it. This is a full stack application that we've been able to build. We covered a whole lot, if you remember. So we built this UI and we added this filter. So the first thing we had to do was build the authentication UI. So when we come back here and we log out, we have the authentication UI. We could switch the page here just to look at the authentication UI. Very simple, very clean. That is it here. And then after doing that, we started building the transaction UI. Then we started adding, or we added the authentication workflow. After that, we completed the transaction UI by making it a CRUD application. And so when you log in, you should be able to carry out a CRUD operation, right? like that. So we log in. So that makes the CRUD operation complete, because we can add and do all sort of stuff that we want. Okay. I think I missed this. All right. Then the next thing we did was to build the filter and sorting UI, and then I added the filter and sorting workflow, and we did that here. So we need to switch this to transactions, and so we did it at this particular point, and we can see all of them showing us up here nicely. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I'll be bringing out more videos. I'll be bringing some detailed video on authentication, how to do authentication, different kind of authentication with Bubble. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. That's how I get excited to create new videos. Thank you very much.